Shalom. Let us study together in a very swift way. We will learn Pirkei Avot, the book of the fathers. We can try to cover every week one chapter. There are 6 chapters in the book of the fathers, consisting each chapter of several paragraphs. We call them Mishnayot. For example, the first chapter of Pirkei Avot has 18 Mishnayot, and we can discuss very swiftly. Of course, there is so much to say about each and every word of the sages, but it can be sufficient to just study superficially the words of the book of the fathers. And by doing it this way, people will be able to cover every week one chapter of Pirkei Avot in this period between Pesach and Shavuot, which is the tradition of the Sephardim among the Jewish people, who every Shabbat they learn one chapter of Pirkei Avot. So we shall discuss a few paragraphs every day, and hopefully we'll be able to finish by the end of the week one chapter. Of course, the book of the fathers begins with a paragraph that comes from the Talmud in Masechet, in the tractate of Sanhedrin at the end, the last chapter of Sanhedrin, and it begins by saying, "Kol Yisrael yesh lahem chelek le'olam haba." All Jews, all Israel have a share in the world to come. That's a great and solid faith that we have, that the Jewish people have their share in the world of God, the world to come, which means there is eternality in the life of the Jew. Of course, you might ask, if that's the case, why should I bother doing tshuva or being religious? There's no need. They promised me I will have a share in the world to come, and that then fine. The answer is very simple. Of course, you could have a share in the world to come. Whether he will have access to it or not is a different matter, depending on your deeds, right? There is also another explanation. We believe in reincarnations. It's possible that you will have to be reincarnated again and again to this world until you perfect yourself, and then you'll be able to gain that which was supposed to be yours in the world to come. And there are other explanations. So the words in Hebrew are, Kol Yisrael yesh lahem chelek le'olam haba. All Jews all Israel have a share in the world to come. Shene'emar ve'amech kulam tzadikim. As it says in a passage in the Bible, all your people together, they are considered to be righteous. Which, by the way, it's also easy to explain. I mean, we have so many Jews who are not Sabbath observant, they are not religious. So how can you say all of them are righteous? They are not. But the answer is that when the Jewish people put together, one completes the other, like it says, our sages said, Israel arevim ze bazeh. The Jews are responsible one for each other. So, and in that kind of understanding, we can understand that all of them together in general, there is righteousness by the Jewish people. And indeed, if one ponders upon the character of the Jewish people, if you minimize, or if you eliminate the side that is really bad, you could find out that the Jews usually are more shy, they are more humble, even though our reputation is not that much. But the truth is that the Jew is more humble, is more shy, and he is is very helpful to his fellow men. Charity and kindness is extremely fluent among the Jewish people. So basically, we know that the Jewish people were chosen to be the nation of God, so you have to understand that there is a reason behind it. Let's go to the first paragraph of Pirkei Avot. Moshe kibel Torah miSinai. Moses received the Torah from Sinai, from the mountain of Sinai. That's where he brought us the Torah, the 613 commandments, right? That's the Torah that God gave him for the purpose to transmit it to us. So exactly the way he received it, that's how he gave it. Also, he transmitted it to Yehoshua. Yehoshua was his disciple. So, of course, he chose Yehoshua, his disciple, rather than to transmit it to his own children. That proves the greatness of Moshe, of Moses. So, Moshe kibel Torah miSinai, sarah li Yehoshua. Yehoshua lizkenim. Also, Joshua transmitted the Torah that he received from Moshe to the elders. The elders are the time when the judges were the leaders of the Jewish people, right? We will not go into details now because we want to make it as short as possible. So that the times of the judges was before the time of the prophets. What we learn from here, that's Joshua, the way he received the Torah from Moshe, that's how he transmitted it to the elders. Which means he did not remove any detail from the Torah, nor did he add anything. Exactly as he received it, that's how he transmitted it. And that's a point here to be made, that the Torah is not to be altered in any way. In some generations, especially in modern generations, people have tried many times to change the status of the Torah, the character of the Torah, to make it more modern or something. But the Torah does not tolerate any changes. The way you receive it, that's how you transmitted it. Uzkenim linvi'im. Also the elders transmitted the Torah to the great people of the time of the prophets. The prophets, of course, the era of the prophets began with Shmuel, Samuel the prophet. And then it goes on and on and on for hundreds of years till the last prophets who were after the destruction of the first temple, Zechariah and Malachi. Haggai, Zechariah and Malachi, the last prophets that we have. And then, what happened then? The Torah was still transmitted exactly the way it was accepted, it was received. So, unvi'im mesaruha le'anshe kneset hagedola. Then the prophets transmitted the Torah to the men of the great assembly. Our tradition says that the men of the great assemblies were 120 great rabbis, among them a few prophets of the last generation of the prophets, and they received the Torah from the prophets, and now the Torah is in the hands of the men of the great assembly, which is the beginning of the era of rabbinical era. The great assembly, the rabbis of the great assembly are the ones who practically set for us the Siddur, the book of prayers that we have, as well as many kinds of additions that they added in order to be able to consolidate the Torah and to keep it, because times have become more dangerous. There was already the destruction of the first temple, and Jews started to forget, because whatever was transmitted orally became more and more difficult because of the persecutions, the wars, and so forth. So therefore we needed very much the 120 great rabbis called the men of the great assembly to give us things that today we use, and it's easy for us to know what to pray. We have the Siddur, the book of prayers, and we have all kinds of things that they have made for us especially. So the Pirkei Avot, the first chapter, the first paragraph says, Hem ameru shelosha devarim. there were three principles that were proclaimed by the men of the great assembly. It does not mean that they gave us only three things. They gave us hundreds, if not thousands of ideas and principles that they added, of course. But those are the three principles that we are going to learn, which practically the emphasis was put on them to show that they are extremely important for the continuation of the Torah and the halachic decisions. So therefore they tell us, first principle, Hevu metunim badin. Be deliberate, be patient before you come up with a halachic decision. Don't be hasty in deciding what is the law. Give it time, learn it well before you give it to your disciples. That's first principle. The second principle, Veha'amidu talmidim harbe. Raise many disciples. Make sure that you have as many students as possible in the yeshiva. Why do I say that? In the old time, in the time of the first Rabban Gamliel, he was more strict regarding whom to accept to come and learn the Torah. The Torah is holy. Giving it to people who are not very holy might be destructive. So therefore he came up with a decision and a proclamation that says, Kol mi she'en tocho kebaro eno ra'ui leikanes lebet hamidrash. Anyone whose inside is not as sincere as his outside is not sincere as inside, and vice versa, is not to be accepted. Now this is something very difficult, so it caused many people who wanted to come to learn not to be able to go to yeshiva. So the Torah started to become diminished in its great power and knowledge, until the time when Hillel came and he changed that. So he said everyone is welcome to the house of study. Also the same thing happened a few generations later in the time of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, when the third Rabban Gamliel had the same opinion as his great-grandfather. So Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah changed that, and he said everyone is welcome to come and learn Torah. And they added, the Talmud says that they added, since the decision of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, they added over 400 benches in the house of study, to show you that people were eager to learn Torah, but not everyone was allowed. So, but now it was possible. So the Torah, Baruch Hashem, developed, and people were able to learn Torah in a way that became more proficient, and that's how the Torah became the knowledge of every Jew. Second paragraph. Shimon HaTzadik haya mishyarei knesset hagedola. Shimon the Just. He was one of the remnants of the great rabbis of the great assembly that we explained before. Shimon HaTzadik was he lived in the time of Alexander the Great. And there are stories about this, but as we say, we don't have the time now to tell you everything. So he was a great and very great rabbi. There are stories about him that in his time there were miracles that happened in the temple, in the sanctuary of the temple, such as the light of the sanctuary never extinguished as long as Shimon the Just lived. When he passed away, then that light, of course, extinguished. That's one of the stories about Shimon HaTzadik. He came up with the following teachings. הוא היה אומר, he used to say, על שלושה דברים העולם עומד, upon three things the world stands. על התורה, number one is the Torah. ועל העבודה ועל גמילות חסדים. The world cannot exist without those three principles. Number one, the learning of Torah. It is the learning of Torah that gives existence to the world. That's according to our belief and our tradition. As our sages said, based on a sentence that says, and a passage that says, Im lo beriti yomam v'layla, chukot shamayim va'aretz lo samti. God says, if it is not for the Torah that I gave to my people, the people of Israel, there's no need for me to create the laws of the universe. There's no need for me to create the world. So the world stands on the learning of Torah. That's why the Jew is under the obligation to learn Torah every day without exception. In fact, the Talmud says that Im yom ta'azveni yomayim e'ezveka. The Torah has a principle. Either you learn it every day, or if, let's say, one day you are lazy and you don't learn it, and you say, tomorrow I will continue the learning. Tomorrow will be more difficult for you in a way that's double. In other words, exactly the words that the Talmud says, Im yom ta'azveni, the Torah says, if you abandon me one day, I shall abandon you 2 days. So it's a clear philosophy that tells us that one should not stop learning Torah. You stop one day, the evil inclination immediately invades your system, and you are not going to easily learn it again, or it might take a long time. But to become a Torah scholar, you have to learn it every day. In fact, there is a passage in the Bible that says, "V'hagita bo yomam v'layla." You have to learn Torah day and night. Of course, those who cannot do it day and night, so they have to learn a little in the day, a little in the night. And if possible, to bring the night and the day together, which means at that time when the day meets the night, that's the best time to learn Torah. For people who work, for example. But there are those people who do spend their days and nights in learning Torah. So, number one, the Torah. Number two, ha'avodah. In the time of the temple, the avodah means the work of the temple, which means the korbanot, the sacrifices, and everything that goes with it. But after the destruction of both temples, we don't have any more sacrifices. So what do? How do we compensate for the sacrifices? So our sages said, the prayer. The prayer will replace the work of the sacrifices, and that's like if you brought a sacrifice to the temple. So the prayer is a very good tool for us to connect with God, and that's why the world stands on prayer also. The third principle that Shimon HaTzadik says, the world stands on ve'al gemilut chasadim, charity and loving kindness. I mean, the world, if you just study Torah without doing any charity, without helping, then what's the purpose of learning? Just learning, warming up yourself without doing anything for the rest of the world? This is unacceptable. What is really important that one should go all his life by these three principles: learning Torah, praying, and the third thing also dealing with charity deeds and helping and kindness to people, to be nice to people, and to seek always the possibility to help others when others are in need and you are able to help. Third paragraph. Antignos ish socho kibel mishimon HaTzadik. So the last one of the great assembly was Shimon the righteous. Now Shimon the righteous also, he had his yeshiva, he had his disciples. The best disciple that he has was Antignos. You see, the name is not anymore Jewish, which means there is already an influence of the civilization of the world infiltrating into the life of the Jewish people. There is, but that doesn't mean he was not a great man. Antignos, the man of Socho. Socho was a village. You could find this name in the book of Joshua, I think in one of the chapters there. So Antignos was a great man. He was the best, the greatest rabbi of his generation. And he was the disciple of Shimon, the tzaddik, the righteous. So he also offered his philosophy. Apparently this man was a real holy man. So he believed in the following. He says, הוא היה אומר, אל תהיו כעבדים המשמשים את הרב על מנת לקבל פרס, אלא היו כעבדים המשמשים את הרב שלא על מנת לקבל פרס, ויהי מורא שמיים עליכם. Let us explain this in a very concise and swift way. His philosophy was this. He had a big yeshiva, many disciples, but he always introduced this message into the mind of his disciples. He told them, when you worship the Lord, when you perform all the commandments of the Torah, when you learn Torah, when you do good deeds, do all this without having in mind that you do it because one day you are going to receive a reward, which means you are going to have the world to come, eternal life, whatever. No. When you do a mitzvah, do it for the sake of the mitzvah, which means sincerity, without expecting any reward. Be like a person, like a slave who works for his master without expecting any payment. Right? אלא הבו כעבדים, be like the slaves, המשמשים את הרב שלא על מנת לקבל פרס. Who work for their masters without expecting any rewards. That's how you should worship the Almighty God. Of course, he does not mean to say that there is no reward. Of course there is a reward for every single mitzvah. Like our sages said in Pirkei Avot, שאין אתה יודע מתן שכרן של מצוות. All the precepts, all the commandments of the Torah, each one of them has a reward. But don't do it because you expect a reward, because that takes away of your sincerity. I agree very much with this philosophy. The problem is that in his academy there were two people very influential. They were rich, one by the name of Baitus, the other one by the name of Tzadok. Those two people, when they heard their great master always repeating this kind of principle, do not expect a prize, a reward, so they started to believe that their master does not believe in a reward. Do all the commandments without, and there is no reward. That's a terrible thought. But they came up with this and they opened their own academies, and that was the beginning of the reform. Not the modern reform movement, but at that time was the Sadducees. The Sadducees come from Tzdukim, from the word Tzadok. Their master was Tzadok, one of the disciples of Antignos. Same thing also with the Baitusim. Those were two sects who did not believe anymore in the Talmud and the oral law. They believed only in the written Bible, but they did not believe in the oral law, which is the explanation of the Bible as we know it. So they did not believe in the resurrection of the dead. They did not believe in many things that the sages gave us and illuminated our knowledge of Torah. And that was the beginning of something that was very tragic among the Jewish people. In fact, the Sadducees, before the destruction of the temple, caused havoc in the mind of the Jewish people, and it started to spread, and then the destruction of the temple happened. I remember my teacher, Rabbi Avigdor Miller, alav shalom, he used to say that with the destruction of the temple, we gained something, and we got rid of all the Sadducees. The Sadducees, most of them, they became Christians. That was the beginning of the Christian era, and it started with the Sadducees somehow. Right? So here, what Antignos meant to convey to his disciples is the holiness of how you do the commandments. You do it with sincerity. Sincerity means you don't expect anything in return. It's enough for the Jew, when he wakes up in the morning and he finds out he is a Jew, to be happy. Not to seek why would you have to seek a payment for that which is already a tremendous privilege? That's exactly the philosophy that he conveyed to his disciples. This was explained the wrong way by some of his disciples, and that caused a tragedy among the Jewish people, and the beginning of new things in life, perhaps even of secularism, right? In a way, if you understand it the way we understand it in this modern age, maybe it started from that. As far as we are concerned, we are going to stop right here because we did 3 little paragraphs. If we do every day another 3 paragraphs, we'll be able to finish the first chapter by the end of the week. Have a very good day, my friends. All the best.